All right, welcome back to the Two Comma Club podcast. Today, Chris and I are joined by Brad. Brad is in the capital raising space, and I'm really excited about this segment. From what I can see on his Instagram, he is up to some really amazing things. And before we started this recording, he actually told us he's in the middle of an event right now. And so I'm excited to learn more about where he's at and what he's up to. So, Brad, if you could kind of tell the people who are listening in what's going on in your world right now and how it is that you can help add value to them, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been raising capital professionally most of my entire adult life. And it all started when I was in my 20s. I went to work for a small oil company, age of 23, started my own oil company and built that up over the course of about 12 years, because I had a skill. It was raising capital from investors. And when I kind of semi-retired a few years ago, I started doing some business consulting. And I'd be talking to people, and I found out that most people have a goal, a dream to be doing more in life. It's kind of what I call that something big. And whether it was launching a restaurant or investing in real estate or getting into a business, I would just say, well, what's holding you back? And it always came down to money. It was never the fear. It was never the limiting belief. It was just like, I don't have the money to open the restaurant. I don't have the money to go buy the business. And I just sat there and I go, man, like, do they not realize every day when they get out of bed, they're surrounded by all the money they need to pretty much do anything in life they want and desire? We just call these other people investors. And so I came up with this idea of launching a educational mentoring platform that we now call Capital School. That's just exploded. I mean, we're in 28 countries. I just completely lost count on the thousands of people that have bought my books or heard me speak, or we coach on a regular basis at any point in time. And it's just absolutely amazing because once somebody understands that concept, and then more importantly, learns the systems and gets the skills, it's game over. I mean, we have some clients that literally have raised, 10 million, 20, 50, $100 million or more that are creating legacy wealth for themselves and their families. And that's what keeps me going. That's what gets me up at night. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I'm a real estate guy, so I get it. And
Oh, you do? Yeah.
I love real estate. I love raising capital. And people always say, hey, I hate to hear something doesn't happen because of a lack of capital. I think it's just a lack of not knowing where the resources are. So I love that. I love that we're getting in and dive into it a little bit with you today. And I think teaching others, there's just money everywhere if you look for it. So I think
absolutely. You just got to know, where to find it. And of course, once you get in front of somebody that does have some money, it's also how to communicate to them, how to speak to them. The biggest mistake I always see from people that try to do this is they're talking to people that have the potential to be investors because they obviously have money, but they don't invest. And the reason is that most people will start pitching the opportunity way too early, right? You got to understand that people will only invest with people they know, like, and trust. You don't build trust on the first call or in the first meeting with somebody. It's just like dating. And so I always tell people, this is a process. It's not an event. You're not going to send your pitch deck out to a bunch of people. You're not going to get on a first or maybe even a second call with a bunch of people. Like, you got to invest in them. And of course, you got to give them the chance to invest in you. And, maybe now on the third meetup, you're talking about the deal, or maybe it's the fourth, you're telling them what you're doing. Then they're much more inclined to invest with you because now you've got that foundation built, right? Where they know you, they trust you. Yeah. So there is definitely a right way and there's definitely a wrong way to go about this. Absolutely.
Yeah. Totally agree. Just looking at, there's so many, what can I say? In the internet, there's just so many, especially in the real estate place, just hoaxers. I don't know what else to say. People just aren't good people.
Yeah.
Obviously, how are people discovering you, or kind of that process to get some good financial education on how to do this, how to do it right? How are people finding you or discovering you?
So, I think a couple ways. Number one, of course, we are on social media for obvious reasons. Obviously, social media today is a great way to really build a community, but also to educate, right? So we educate through our YouTube channel, we educate through our webinars. And I think that by allowing people the opportunity to spend some quality time with me, they get to know me. They get to realize, okay, this guy's a real deal. Like, his knowledge is way over the top. And then from there, it's just a matter of, getting on what I call a clarity call. Like, okay, you're here. I call this being at point A. You want to go over here, point B. That's where you want to be in a couple of years. There's a knowledge gap. You don't know what you don't know. And what a lot of people overlook is that when you take somebody else's money and they're investing with you in a passive role, meaning they're relying on you to create a return on the investment, you're selling a security. Plain and simple. the securities industry, of course, is highly regulated, right? At the state level, you got the SEC. And, I just kind of laugh. And the securities attorneys that I work real closely with just kind of laugh and just say, man, there's a whole bunch of people out there doing it the wrong way. They don't even know they're selling a security. They're just raising money. And when you get caught, oh man, it's a world of hurt. It's expensive. You can go to prison, let alone you can be fined. You could be barred from the industry. And I've seen it all. And I've actually been brought in as an expert witness to testify as an expert at a lot of arbitrations and a lot of lawsuits. And so I tell people, let's get you the knowledge you need to go out and do this the right way. Because once you get the knowledge, once you put in the systems and the structure, you can scale to any size. Like, I've worked for companies that today manage billions and billions of dollars, but they got the systems, they understand compliance, they understand investor relations, they got a accounting department to make sure that they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But we always start with that first, letting people know that, yes, it's hard to raise capital, work is involved, you got to make calls, you got to do the follow-up. But here's the thing, the real work starts once you get their money. Because now you're a fiduciary. Now you got to do what you said you were going to deliver on. And then, of course, once you do that, the world kind of becomes your oyster, because now you can go back to that investor after you've gained their trust and say, hey, Chris, who are you connected with, man, that I should also be speaking to? And now you tap into their network, and then you tap into those people's network. And, like I like to say, I've never seen a poor person under a palm tree over there at Neckar Island hanging out with Richard Branson. Rich people, no other rich, wealthy people.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
True,
So,
it's true.
yeah, talking about the highly regulated securities industry and everything, what are some of those major pitfalls that you see that people are running into that they're not necessarily doing properly, but should be doing?
Yeah. The big one is when we raise money from investors, we are basically offering a security. Traditionally, a security has to be registered, right? So you register your offering with the SEC. But what we look for as business owners or entrepreneurs is an exemption from registration. The most popular and probably the most widely is something that maybe you've heard of before. It's called Reg D, or Regulation D, which is basically an exemption from registration. And we can choose to work with both accredited or non-accredited investors. Well, one of the more, quote, procedural things, this is more of a procedural thing that you're supposed to do to make your offering effective, is you're supposed to file what we call your Reg D notification with the SEC. And it's just, more of a procedural thing. You go to a website, your attorney can do it, a legal assistant. I've done it before because I've done hundreds of these. But now it puts them on notice. Hey, I am raising money, but I'm claiming an exemption from registration. Boom. Most people overlook doing that. The other thing that you're supposed to do is notify the states through the filing of what we might call a blue sky notice filing. So as you get investors in new states, you're supposed to be doing that as well. But the biggest thing, by far the biggest thing that we're seeing people misuse is getting others to help them raise money. So if I reached out to you, for example, John, and said, hey, John, come on board, man. You know a bunch of rich people. I'm going to pay you a little commission or a little transaction fee. That's illegal. You have to be licensed within the financial services industry. You're not a broker-dealer. You're not licensed to a broker-dealer, so I can't pay you a commission. And so what a lot of people are doing is they're like, hey, come on to my team. I'll make you a co-general partner, because now you can essentially claim the same exemption that I'm claiming. But the big mistake is that a lot of people are just involved in, quote, raising capital. They're not taking on the other responsibilities that an operator or a general partner would be doing, right? If you're buying real estate, for example, there's a lot more than just raising money. So when we work with people, what we do is we assign them responsibilities so that they are officially on the team. Now, God forbid, because I've always seen, bad things happen to good people, right? Let's just say, God forbid, we're ending up in an arbitration or a lawsuit. And there's a good plaintiff's attorney and says, and so, John, what was your role in all this? Oh, I just helped raise money. You've just put a noose around your neck for the most part and hung yourself. But if you're like, well, I raised some money. I was involved in some meetings with the property management team. I traveled to the location with Brad and the other people that were on the team to look at the building. And then, of course, I was on calls with, some of the contractors. Now you're doing stuff, right? Now you can justify your role under that exemption, and now it's legit. But you cannot be paid a commission. So the way you're paid, just like me, is out of the cash flow of the asset. You're paid a piece on the back end when we sell the asset. And so now you're actually learning the business, helping raise capital, but you're going about doing it the right way. Second, I say, hey, I'm going to pay you a commission. I don't care what you call it. People are trying to call it a transaction fee, a consulting fee. And what they overlook is it don't matter what you call it. It's the activity behind it that dictates what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's where a lot of folks get in trouble. They just kind of shoot from the hip and they don't have a system. They don't have, like you said, they don't have a clear indication of what they're doing. And I'm sure they have good intentions. They're just not doing it the right way. And I see that over and
Exactly.
over.
And, you know, it only takes one disgruntled investor, just
Yeah.
one,
Oh, yeah.
to pick up the phone, call the state securities board in the state they live in, file an investigative complaint, and boom, you're done. You're done, because now you can't fight that. I mean, come on, state or even the SEC, they got unlimited resources. They're going to bleed you to death. You're probably going to have to hire an attorney. Attorney's probably going to say, yeah, you know, I need a retainer, $10,000, $20,000 to just even get started in this. And then by the time you go through all the bullshit and all the stuff, it is a long, drawn out process. And I've literally seen people having to file bankruptcy or worse yet, close their doors just because the regulators came in and shut them down. And it gets even worse than that. The regulators have the ability to go to your investors and say, would you like your investment back? Your investment was solicited improperly, and so now you get a right of rescission. So what do you think that does in the mind of the investor? Puts a lot of doubt. Obviously, like, holy crap, like these guys didn't know what they were doing. So now most people say, yeah, I want my money back. And of course, you don't have the money to give back. So it really just starts a whole chain of events that can get real ugly real fast. And so that's why, you know, as we built my platform, which is the educational platform, we have created strategic relationships with 5 different securities attorneys, not 1, not 3, but 5 that are all available for Q&A. We get them on our calls. They come to my boot camps to just make sure that the people that are out there that want to raise capital are doing it the right way, staying out of trouble. I like to say, we're going to keep you out of jail. Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Looking at your business, obviously, I mean, I love what you're doing. I think doing things the right way is always the best way to do it. I see you guys obviously have been doing it for a while, which I appreciate, because so many people come on new and they just, you know, to me, it just hasn't been good. I've been to tons of real estate meetings, tons of real estate groups, and people are doing things, and it always seems like everybody wants to take a shortcut. In
Yeah.
real estate, especially raising capital, you just can't do shortcuts, obviously doing that. What's some of your experience, or what are some of the things just that because of your experience have saved you a lot of time, trouble, and effort for your investors? And what's the benefit, obviously, from working with you versus somebody else?
If you want to save time on watching all the episodes, but still get all the gold nuggets that we find from interviewing these 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs, then you can get all of that inside of the 2 Comma Club newsletter. Just go to 2ccnewsletter.com and subscribe.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. Number one is we like to basically take what could be months and turn them into days. I call that a quantum leap. The other thing that makes me very different than some of these other, you know, coach gurus out there, you know, we know who all of them are. Most of them have raised, you know, maybe 10 million, even 50, $100 million. Most all of that money has been raised from what we call high net worth retail investors. These are the doctors, the business owners, you know, they make a couple $100,000 a year, whatever. I've been doing this so long, and when you get to 2 billion, you're raising money not just from them, you're raising money from family offices, broker dealer distribution for a huge fund, registered investment advisory firms, raised 50 million out of the country of Israel, sovereign nations, insurance companies, pensions, trusts, you know. So I have clients that I consult that are billion-dollar businesses. I don't see any of the other gurus consulting billion-dollar businesses. And when they come to me, they've already raised hundreds of millions. And I'm like, what do you need help with? They're like, well, we're at $1 billion. We want to go to 3. And we need the relationships that you can give us access to, which are the big pension funds or the sovereign wealth funds. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter where somebody is on this journey. You could be a brand new beginner that's never raised a dime, and I can coach you and get you started. Or you can come to me and say, hey, man, I've successfully raised $50, $100 million, and I now need to learn how to network with the family offices and need to learn how to build distribution for my fund with broker dealers. I mean, I'm at an event here and I got half a dozen people that we coach that are presenting in front of a room with capital allocators. I got a guy here getting ready to speak. Guy's a direct descendant of the Medici family. It's one of the most powerful, wealthiest families going back, you know, hundreds of years. His great-great-great-grandfather was the Pope. I mean, come on, you talk about mega wealth. There's going to be Trail McCrow here later today. It's one of the biggest developers in the United States, right? The Trammell Crow Association. So it's all about just getting in the right rooms. And no other coach that I've seen says, hey, you sign up for my program, I will invite you to come to these events alongside me. I'll be your Sherpa. I'll open the doors. I'll make the connections, because I want people to ultimately be successful. You know, the thing that I've learned about coaching, which I'm very unfortunate, but I've talked to so many other coaches, is some will, some won't. So what? There's always going to be somebody else. When people sign up for a coaching program, the coach is always present, always there. But a lot of the people that pay a coach just aren't willing to do the work, plain and simple. They just fall off the bus. They ain't willing to do the work. And then what do? They blame the coach. Oh, your program didn't work for me. Well, that's funny. It's worked for a whole bunch of other people, but let's check this out. Well, I looked at my online academy. You've signed in twice and you've only completed 5% of the entire academy. So what does that tell me? You haven't gone in there and done any of the lessons. Haven't seen you in any of the weekly calls I do. I show up twice a week on Tuesdays, Thursdays, saw you maybe 2 times, haven't seen you since. You're trying to tell me my system don't work? I raised $2 billion with it, and I got testimonials out the yin yang from people that have raised millions of dollars. So it will work if you're willing to do the work. So, you know, it's kind of a catch-22. Now my sales team, of course, tells people that just, you know, you got to look yourself in the mirror before you invest in this, because it is a lot of money. But if you ain't going to show up and you ain't going to do the work, save your time, save your grief. So we only look for people that have the interest, the intent, but more importantly, are willing to do the work. You know, yeah, it's all about doing the work.
Amen to that.
Yep.
It's such a interesting concept. You know, how it is that people are really adamant about going and getting the results that it is that we can help them with as coaches and things of that nature. But they always seem to be held back by either their limiting beliefs or other factors. What are some of the most common factors that you face in the capital raising side of things that you help people get over, so that way they can actually get out of their own way and get those results?
It is absolutely, I think, the limiting belief, you know, the fear, whatever you want to call it. What I have come to realize is that the most successful people I have ever met block out the noise. The body will always do what the mind tells it to. So I know I need to work out every day. Get up. I don't feel like working out, but I go because my mind tells my body I got to get out the door and I got to do my walk, or I got to go to the fitness center. So what you have to do is literally block out the white noise in your mind. You know, fear, when you look at the fear of doing something, the 4 letters FEAR is false evidence that appears real. Okay. If you guys have studied the way the mind works, there's a part of the brain, a lot of psychologists call it the reptilian brain, because it's common in most living organisms. It's designed to do one thing: keep us alive. And so the mind or the body will always back away, has a tendency to back away from anything frightful or scary or that is a threat. Starting a business, raising capital seems scary. Of course it is scary, right? So your body tends to back away. You come up with all these limiting beliefs and these reasons not to do it. You talk yourself right out of the biggest opportunity that you could ever have, because in their book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Kiyosaki says the key to building legacy wealth is to master the art of using OPM, or at least understanding that principle, because that is a gasoline, man, that can just accelerate your business. But most people will never do it. Why? Because they're scared. And I'm like, dude, you just got to fall into that fear. You just got to jump in. What's the worst thing that can happen? You don't raise money. Okay, but at least you tried. And Tim Grover, who I've really grown to respect, of course, in his book, Relentless, you know, personal coach of some of the greatest sports guys on the planet, like Kobe, Michael Jordan, he has a quote that I love. He said, you think the price to pay for success is huge? You wait till you get that bill for regret. Yeah. Boy, that just hits home, don't it? You're going to get to a point when you're much older, when you look back at your life and you're like, man, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. I had all the opportunity to build wealth and to do things that I wanted to do, and I never took action. And, you know, that's a pretty hard pill to swallow, because you're going to get to a point in your future where it is too late. You know, you might have a family, you have responsibilities, you know, where you're just too old and you're like, man, I'm 75 years old. I can't take that risk financially. So the time to do it is when you think about it. Just take action. And the key is showing up every day, because I've learned incremental effort over time creates monumental success. right? Just like losing weight. When I see someone with a six-pack on the beach, I'm like, dude, I know the work that went behind that. It just don't happen overnight. I really commend you. Well, same thing becoming a billionaire, same thing in starting a business, same thing in anything that creates and defines success.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of not listening to the noise going on in your mind that will ultimately talk you right out of one of the biggest opportunities that you could ever have.
I love that, Brad. Preach it, brother. I totally agree with what you're saying.
It's
I
true.
think it is the work. And I think, a lot of people do want the success, but I always say, hey, go for the slow dime, not the quick nickel, because it pays dividends. But I think a lot of people do want that. They do want that fast, or that's just not how real estate is, especially real estate. It is a get rich slow scheme is what I always tell people. But the opportunities, like you said, are just crazy out there with just people. I mean, obviously, these things like 401ks that are abandoned and net worth people have in their houses to invest. There's so many, just the world is just such rich with resources. And like you said, key is educating people about it. And then, like you said, building that relationship. And like you said, ultimately, people like and trust you. They're going to put their money somewhere, either in a losing thing or something that's winning, but they're going to invest in the day with somebody they like and trust. I totally agree with that. Start now, like, I mean, where'd you come from? How did you get in the real estate space, the coaching space, and in the investing space? Obviously, you said you had an oil company, but I'm sure you didn't wake up with a silver spoon in your mouth. You know what I mean? So
No, I mean, it was just basically, traditional middle class. Certainly didn't grow up rich.
yeah,
We didn't grow up knowing how to raise capital. I did have a very wealthy, rich uncle, so he was an orphan, never had more than a sixth grade education, became a very wealthy businessman. But how I got started was I was a student studying architecture. I wanted to be an architect. And so I was going to college and was going through the newspaper looking for a job. And I just was circling ads. And this one looked appealing. And it was a small oil company. They were looking for a person to come on and help them raise capital. So I went to work there, learned how to raise capital, kind of got coach mentored by the CEO. Then I went to work for another company doing the same thing and found out, unfortunately, that company was doing things improperly, dishonestly. So when I resigned, I started my own company. And I had the network with some investors, found a geologist, found a securities attorney, got an accountant on the team, and then slowly grew that business. In the late 80s, early 90s, when the Tax Reform Act took away most of the incentives for investment capital and oil prices plummeted, I just slowly kind of consolidated, collapsed the business, never had to file bankruptcy because we had no debt on the books. And then I went back to school and I completed my undergraduate degree. Came out now with a nice little diploma, looking for a job, and it's very disillusioned because people wanted to hire me, smart kid, pretty much honors, but they wanted to pay me a salary that was close to what I used to make in a month. And I'm just like, this sucks. There ain't no way I'm going to go back to corporate America. I ain't going to do this. And so literally for like a year, I just was like a cork in the ocean. I was like, man, what am I going to do? I mean, I looked at going into law. I looked at becoming a doctor. Where in the hell am I going to make upper mid six figures? And so finally it dawned on me, man, my skill, what allowed me to build my business was knowing how to raise capital. I bet you that is a skill that a lot of people would pay a lot of money for. And so I entered basically the financial services industry, going to work for big real estate sponsors, some of the world's largest financial services firms as a paid capital raiser. And then, of course, I started my own fund, and me and my partner, we have a fund called Crescendo Capital Group where, we raise money from investors. We go out, we basically invest in cash flowing multi-tenant real estate. It's multifamily, could be self-storage. We're going in and putting an offer in on a self-storage asset right now, north of Houston. And it's just really about, practicing what it is you preach to show people that, hey, I'm actively raising money. Like, dude, I got a fund too, but I'm also over here teaching you how to do it. And so I'm real passionate about that. I got into real estate back in 2005. Started, single family like most people, got a portfolio of well over a dozen properties. And when you look at the market value of, each individual house and you kind of add that up, it's like, for a little $5 million portfolio. And then when I started selling, I took the gains. I started investing in larger assets, fourplexes, right, sixplexes. And then obviously in the work I've done over my career where I was raising capital professionally, I would negotiate with the founder and CEO of the company. Hey, instead of paying me this big fat salary and this commission, because I was licensed at the time, I can get paid. Why don't we lower that? Just give me a little piece of each and every deal I raise capital for. Because I knew if I ever left their employment, the revenue stream would continue in perpetuity as long as they own that building. And so I'm, rewarded pretty nicely with a recurring passive income on all of the tens of millions I've raised for some of these other investment sponsors over the years, which, allows me to have a lot more flexibility and choices in life, because most people exchange their time for money. And I decided a long time ago, man, I do not want to do that. We call that having a job. Once you understand how to buy businesses, how to invest in assets, how to use your money as a tool to create streams of passive income, you start moving more in the direction of true financial freedom. Now you can work anywhere. You don't really care if your boss fires you on, hey, screw you, buddy. I never really liked this job anyway. I'm making $3,500, $4,000 a month off my real estate portfolio or off my businesses that I have, which has been my side hustle. You just didn't know about it, right? So you should always be doing that. But the other big thing, of course, is the tax benefits that come along with real estate. Most people don't even look at that as a benefit, right? But that's a huge benefit. So, real estate's been great. Of course, coaching and teaching other people have been great. But, getting back to kind of what we had talked about before, I actually trademarked something, which has now got a U.S. patent, federal trademark, and it's called the art of beliefology. It's a word I made up, beliefology. Well, what is that? It's the understanding that your daily habits will eventually create a belief system. And that belief system that is created by your underlying habits then will define and create the reality, which is the life you lead. And I've seen this in people that I've coached. There was a guy that I coached a couple of years ago. This dude weighed 480 pounds and he wanted to be a coach. And so I'm like, great. And so he, started his coaching business. Nobody would hire him. I'm like, yeah, no one's going to hire you. You can't even take care of yourself, let alone coach anybody else. I said, you lose 200 pounds and then you become a weight loss coach. And he's like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, you need to go every morning and wake up and go for a walk. Just walk, move your arms, walk. Next week, I want you to walk and look for the light poles or look for the telephone poles. And you're going to walk from one to the next. Then you're going to lightly jog. Then I give you permission to walk again. And every week you just double that distance. Well, a month later, the dude's running 3 miles, then eventually 5 miles. And eventually the dude lost 240 pounds. And I said, now you're a weight loss coach. But the funny thing is very early when I was coaching him, he came on one of the Zooms. He said, you remember, Mr. Blazar, you were telling me to, have these positive affirmations in the morning. Like when I look at myself in the mirror, I can never come up with anything to say positive because I hated myself. But today I was able to finally say something. I'm like, oh man, here it comes. I can't wait to hear what he's going to say. I said, what was it, Jason? He said, I looked at myself in the mirror today and I said, I am an athlete. And I'm like, boom, bingo. I said, in habits that we've been instilling over the last 2 or 3 months of you walking, now you're jogging, you see yourself as an athlete. What do athletes do? They work out, they eat healthy. Now I tell you, the dude could be on the cover of GQ or Esquire. You wouldn't even know the guy had weighed 480 pounds 4 or 5 years ago.
I love it.
So it's that belief that now enters your mind that is supported by the underlying habits. Same thing with capital raising. Once you start the process and you're like, holy crap, I just got this check from somebody that didn't know me 2 months ago, $100,000. I'm like, well, yeah, go out and do it again. And then again, just repeat the process. Before you know it, you raised $1 million, then 5. Yeah. Now your life's changing.
That's awesome. I love that. And I love how you brought up the story about the individual who you said was ultimately going to become a weight loss coach. There was actually a gentleman, I saw this like at the beginning of the year. He posted on December 31st of 2024 a new social media profile called I Am Done Being Obese. And he weighs probably somewhere around that weight. Yeah. And that first video, he explained, like, these are my pain points. I'm so sick of this. Follow me on my journey of this. By January 7th, a week later, he had gotten, I believe it was close to 500,000 followers on Instagram from those 8 reels that he had posted just of him literally getting up and going for a walk. Yeah. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of what you're talking about here is the mindset behind a lot of this stuff and surrounding yourself with the right influences and the right people and things of that nature. And so ultimately, like, I want to hear, how is it that what happened in your environment that allowed you the opportunity to start thinking in that capacity and gaining that mindset and ultimately sharing it with others?
I think I've always had the mindset, but I think what happens to a lot of people is it goes dormant. It's like inside of us, we got this desire, we got this other gear. We know we could be doing more, but we don't. And I heard a phrase about 4 years ago that I absolutely love, and he's become a good friend. He's been my personal coach for quite a while now, Coach Michael Burr out of Nashville, Tennessee, just an absolute rock star. He was at an event and he heard a Navy SEAL talking about something called prey drive. And it's not prey, P-R-A-Y, it's prey like a bird of prey. And so this Navy SEAL said, here as a SEAL, we train people to see something in the mind or with their eyes and pursue it to its ultimate conclusion. He said, if I could activate the prey drive in humans, that would be huge. Like when they start something, they finish it. They don't give up. And so he has become known as the world's #1 activator of prey drive, inspiring people, motivating people, and just to be around him is absolutely infectious. But, now doing what I do, having spoken on stages with some of the most famous people on the planet, like Floyd Mayweather, Jesse Itzler, John Maxwell, Elena Cardone, Jordan Belfort, all these other quote celebrities, you start to learn from each and every one of them. You're backstage or you hear what they say, and you just realize that instinct, whatever you want to call it, that was dormant has been reactivated. And then you just show up and you take action each and every day. The way to get what you want in life is to just take an action. Just show up and take an action. Make that decision. And by doing that, you're literally ahead of the other 97% of the people that don't. Like people say, well, how'd you get so successful? I just showed up. Wow. Like that's so amazing. It ain't rocket
I love
science.
that.
I just showed up. The other 97% of the people that ain't where I am chose not to. Again, it gets back to they just don't want to do the work. They don't want to show up. It ain't rocket science, folks. It's just, yeah, it's hard work. Of course it is. I've traveled all over the world. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning to get my workout in before my day gets started. And the biggest problem that most people have, or the biggest excuse they'll ever give you, is I don't have time. Oh my God, bullshit. I call, like Matt McConaughey would say, bullshit on that one. What you're really saying is it ain't important to you. You will always find time for the things in your life that are important. Well, if you wake up an hour early, did I just find you an extra hour on the day? Yeah. Well, why don't you do that? Well, you can always find time.
Yeah. I think part of what you're saying is that a couple of things I want to touch on. That incremental effort, like you said, is super important. But like you said, you got to find the time for the incremental effort. But I really think more so is who you hang around. I mean, if you're hanging around people, you can't raise capital. You can't do this. Your coach, what's he know? These are the people that people listen to, though. These are the people, the voices they take. And I think it's super. And John, I talk about this a lot. Our why, your why has to be so big you drown those voices out. What you're doing, why you get up every morning. And it is true. The top 5 people, in my life, it is more and more true. The top 5 people I hang around with is who I'm like. I mean, I mimic them. I do the same thing.
Exactly. You become the average of the 5 to 7 people you spend most of the time with. And here's the sad and unfortunate thing. I've seen this happen so many times, which is the reason that successful couples today, like Albert and Sal Preciado, or Coach Bert and his wife Natalie and others, if you're not growing with your partner, your spouse, you have a really good chance to end up in divorce, because you will eventually outgrow the person that you met that fell in love with you, where they're like, you're a different person now. And I'm like, I sure the hell hope to. I am a different person than the guy you married, whatever, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so you have to develop the understanding that you are evolving and changing. And if you can bring that partner with you and bring them into the business, hallelujah, great, home run. But a lot of people don't have the flexibility or the ability to do that. And so you have to sit down and explain what I am doing is for the benefit of our family. I'm traveling, I'm doing this, I'm listening to the right people. Now, she may originally be one of your biggest naysayers. Oh, what do those people know? Blah, 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 right? But when they start seeing the results and they start seeing the successes, then you win them over. Like I'll tell you, 4.5, 5 years ago, when I told my family I was going to basically walk away from a very well-paying mid-6-figure career. I mean, I'm talking 400,000 or 500,000 a year, which is a lot of money. They're like, "Are you fucking idiot? Like, you're walking away from that 401k and you're walking away from all the benefits and the paycheck." I'm like, "You bet I am," because I've always had a dream to be on stage, be a speaker, be like a Tony Robbins. My mom was the biggest naysayer. Like, "Don't you need to have a license to do this?" I don't think so. And look at where I am now. We're running a multiple 7-figure business, and I'm taking pictures with people backstage like Jesse Itzler and Ed Milet, and all these rich famous people. I got 3 books, working on book number 4. They're like, dude's a stud. He did what he set out to do, but there was no turning back, because once I made that decision, I said, I'm closing the door, and I'm going to eventually work on becoming the person that I envision in my mind, because it's all about manifestation. Right.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so it's just setting the agenda, kind of putting together the blueprint, and then just executing. It's, and here's something, this is a golden nugget for your listeners. People will always want to do something. And so they go to Google, they get on the internet. How do I do this? How do I get started in real estate? How do I launch a business? The question is not how, it's who's already done this that can show me the blueprint.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that is the question you should be asking. I guarantee there's somebody out there that's done what you want to do. And so that's why the coaching business, the mentoring business is what it is today. It's because you're asking yourself the wrong question. Like, you could Google, how do I do this? And you could spend the next 6 months trying to figure out how to do it, or a year. But you find someone that's already done it, and you're like, hey, I want to hire you as my mentor or coach so that you can show me how to do this. And now you're taking what could be months and you're turning it into weeks.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You
Yeah.
know?
That you hit the nail on the head with that. And Chris introduced me to one of his favorite books, and it goes right in line with what you're talking about here. And it's the Who Not How by Dr.
Yeah.
Benjamin Hardy. And that book is so
Cool.
powerful, to say the very least. And
Yep.
I'm curious, in your experience and in your time, like, what have been some of those books similar to Who Not How that have really like taken you from one level of thought to another, that have helped you excel to the degree that you are today?
Well, obviously, Tim Grover's book, Relentless, that's a huge book. He talks about 3 types of people: coolers, closers, cleaners. The book Pray Drive, that became a bestseller by my good buddy, Coach Michael Burt. Great book. Love that book to death. Think and Grow Rich, which is obviously one of the most famous books, Napoleon Hill, right? Outwitting the Devil by Sharon Lechter. And so there's just, a lot of books, and it really gets down to, am I interested in reading a book about mindset? Am I interested in reading a book about business? Am I interested in reading a book about doing something like investing in real estate? There are so many great books out there. And then, of course, the other is not just what you read, it's also what you listen to. There's some great podcasts out there. I was just out in Vegas, met Sean Kelly. And Sean Kelly is crushing it. Dude's got 12 million followers. Each episode's downloaded by 500,000 people. And, we talked to Sean about a year ago to be on his show, and kind of went back and forth. And, now I met him in person. I'm like, hey, dude, man, it's great to finally meet you. How can I help you? Like, I got so many people in my Rolodex, Sean. Who would you like to interview? He's like, man, I just like to interview really interesting people. Just hooked him up with Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's dad. Dude is a rock star. He handled the careers of people like Chaka Khan, Kool and the Gang, right? Destiny's Child. And, I'm hoping that they connect. But now there's kind of this reciprocal favor. Hey, now that I did that, hopefully you bring me onto your show, interview me. I'll be in Vegas in a couple of weeks, and let's connect in your studio. So what I've learned also is you don't ask, you add value. Then you ask. These rich, wealthy people and or any celebrities, man, they're attacked all day long by all of the leeches, all of the people that are just ask. When I meet somebody of influence, the first thing I say is, hey, Chris, hey, John, how can I help you? What can I do for you to make your show better than it already is? You need some introductions, whatever, just let me know. And so they take appreciation of that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing also, I think, with raising money. I educate first before I ask people to invest, because a lot of times the people that are investing, they're not knowledgeable of real estate like I am. They're just completely passive. A doctor's way too busy to know all the intricacies of understanding real estate. He's just like, man, here's my money. I like it. It's going to give me some great cash flow, going to help my money grow. Because I tell the people that I mentor, as you're talking to people and you're getting to know them, what you got to uncover is their need. Everybody wants their money to be doing something. So as an example, if I was getting to know you, John, and you said something like, Brad, one of my biggest problems, man, is I got 2 kids I got to put through college in the next 4 to 5 years. Boom, I write that down. It goes in my CRM. Now, maybe 3 weeks later, when I'm pitching my big investment, I say, hey, John, you remember you told me how you got those kids to put through school in a couple of years? Can you see how this investment's going to grow your capital and help you do that? Yeah. Lights out, man. That dude's writing me a check. Or maybe I'm talking to a doctor and he said, Brad, I'm a surgeon, man. I make $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year. My biggest problem is taxes. I write that down. Can you see how this is going to help you with that? We got things called depreciation, write off all the capital expenditures. This is going to help lower your taxes. So the big thing about understanding how to raise capital is to ask good, great questions. And the big problem that most people have in sales is they're really good at selling what I call the flirt. Man, you're flirting all day, but you ain't closing. Shut up and listen, and then ask for the sale.
Yeah, I think part of the problem, like you said, asking, and usually if they're saying no, there's a reason behind that. You know, the
Smoke
no is
screen.
not, so what's the reason? Like you said, like he's
Excellent.
afraid to put capital in because of his kids. He's
Yep.
afraid about tax advantages. If he makes money, he's going to pay more in taxes. It's just realizing what the real issue is behind it. Like you said, asking questions is where it's at. And that's where it adds value. So looking at that, like I mean, I'll get a ton out of it, what we're sharing here. And like I love talking about that. And I don't think it's a matter of there's plenty of capital out there. There's
Oh,
plenty
yeah.
of people. And I don't think it's about in closing, but people don't understand. I think like you said, education is key. And then really once you educate and you give enough value, it's not hard to ask for the sale because you already know the key points of
Well,
what
you know, I think another bigger problem though, Chris, is a lot of people have that dream, that goal, that I want to do something big. And so they go talk to the bank, and maybe they have poor credit. Maybe they have something happened in a prior life where they had a bankruptcy or whatever. Then they just acquiesce and they give up, thinking, oh man, there ain't no hope. Can't get that loan or turn down the SBA. There are other options out there. The biggest is obviously investment capital, right? You get investors to back the idea. You get investors to basically come on board. And when you look at a lot of businesses, they were backed by friends, family, investors. I work with a lot of people that have successful businesses. One of my clients owns a winery, and he needed to raise some capital to expand it and then open up something called the Vintner's Table, which was kind of a nice Italian restaurant that served the wines that they were making. And he's like, how am I going to do this? And I'm like, do you have a wine club? He's like, yeah. I'm like, how many people you got in your wine club? About 800. They love you. Go to them. I guarantee a lot of those people that are in your wine club are accredited investors. Give them the chance to put $50,000, $100,000 to seed your investment. I said, how big is your list of people that have come out here to the winery? Thousands. Market to them. And so they have this user base in their existing business with people that know, like, and trust them. And I'm just like, that is your low hanging fruit. Go to them and say, hey, we're expanding the winery. We're opening up something new and exciting called the Vintner's Table. And we're giving you the right of refusal to become a founding partner or whatever you want to call it. And they get special benefits that most other people are not going to have access to. Make it special. Before you know it, boom, $2 million, $3 million.
I love it. It really is that easy. I hate to say it, but it really is.
It really is.
It's embarrassingly easy, but once again, I think part of it's fear we just talked about and not knowing. So that's a total whole thing. Once you get somebody's mind shift to change and you've done it once, it really becomes a lot easier to do it this next time. And it's just really, like you said, if you don't ask, you don't get it. So I think that's big too. So looking at that, like obviously, what do you see? So I don't do a lot of politics stuff. Where do you see the economic climate now, where things are with interest rates and with real estate? What do you see with people, retiring, getting out of the business, aging out, baby boomers and investment? What do you see going on that's either got you excited or got you concerned right now?
Well, I just spent this past weekend with Donald Trump in Vegas and had the chance to hear him speak. And so, he's laid out his whole agenda: lower interest rates, stimulating the economy, protecting our borders, tariffs. I think we're really destined for a huge boom in the next 4 years under Trump, cryptocurrency, et cetera. Obviously, he's a real estate entrepreneur, so I think that he's really going to favor certain asset classes. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to create significant wealth over the next 4, potentially maybe even over the next 8 years if JD Vance decides he wants to continue. But I think the economy is really sound. I think that you have to realize most all industries are cyclical, right? Like people always come up with the excuse, well, I can't raise money now because interest rates are. I'm like, dude, I fucking been raising rents for 35 years. I've raised it when interest rates were at 12, 16%. I've raised, through all kinds of market cycles. Again, you're listening to the white noise. You're talking yourself right out of a great opportunity. So It's just about, taking action. And that's really hard for a lot of people. I get it,
Yeah.
but sometimes you just got to fall into that. You got to, and here's the thing that I've learned: as scary as the idea sounds, once you take the action, 9 out of 10 times the solution will always present itself to you, right? You just got to commit to take the action. And then once you do that, like, the solution will always present itself to you. And so, I basically give an example and tell you a story. About 2 years ago, when I was invited to speak down in Miami, Florida, I was sharing the stage with Bobby Castro. Dude sold this company for $1 billion. Today, he has hundreds of millions in his multifamily portfolio. He's got a family office. We had Brandon Dawson, right? Brandon Dawson, of course, 10X, Grant Cardone's business partner. We had Floyd Mayweather. We had hip hop musical artist, big time name, Rich the Kid. And I went to my wife and I said, man, I'm going to go down there in a private jet. She's like, what? Yeah, I'm going to go down in a private jet, man. Floyd Mayweather's got a jet. Brad Blazar's got a jet. She's like, you have any idea what that cost? I had no freaking idea. I'd never done it before. It's scary. So she's like, why don't you just fly first class? I mean, go first class, it's $1,200-1,500. So I started calling charter companies. Mr. Blazar, the estimates in your email, 42,000 on that one. Oh shit. Cheapest one I could find was $36,000. I signed the contract and I wired the deposit. My wife went ballistic. I mean, like screaming, yelling, pulling her hair out. What are you doing? That's our daughter's college fund. I sat back and I said, okay, that jet has 9 seats. I only need one. I went to social media and I said, hey guys, I'm getting a mastermind put together in the sky at 40,000 feet, private jet. Everyone's going to be 7, 8 figure ballers. Sold the other 8 seats and I flew for free.
I love
Now, it
that.
scared the shit out of me because I was liable for $35,000. But I fell into it and I figured the shit out and I ended up flying for free, and I've done it multiple times. But, just taking the action of making that decision. We got great content. Everybody had a lot of fun. Some people that were coach friend of mine said, man, that changed my life. That set me up because I was thinking too small.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. That sounds a lot like Myron Golden's private jet story. He
Yeah.
basically wanted to start flying private, so he put together an offer that would allow him to do so, and then
Yep.
here he can do it
There you
regularly.
go.
And
Yep.
that's such an amazing concept that you got there. So in your business and experience and life and everything, what would you say has kind of been like your number one superpower or unique ability that has allowed you to crush it doing what you do?
I think there's a couple things. One I think is just really reading people, building relationships. I think one of the other big things that has both been a benefit, but also maybe a hindrance, is I'm a real giver. I just like to give, and sometimes I just give too much. And then finally, you realize, okay, you're giving way too much. You got to create boundaries. You got to learn to say no. But I think the real thing that's allowed me to raise a lot of money is really building relationships with people, really showing people that I care about them, that I'm vested in their success, that I want them to do more. The other, I think, also is, just being around, kind of like you said, Chris, other successful people that are at or above where I currently am in my business, and learning and listening, but more importantly, implementing. Like when I see somebody doing something and they're crushing it, I'm like, what are they doing, man? I got to watch, and then I got to implement.
Yeah.
You can be a bystander and you can watch other people have all the success, or you can learn from them and then implement those things in your business so that hopefully you have comparable success. Now, it might not happen overnight, but at least you're making progress. At least you're moving forward. And I think what happens to a lot of people is they start doing something, it doesn't take off as fast as they would have hoped it would, and then they just give up. It's like that great book. I forget what it's called, 6 Feet from Gold or something like that. It's about these guys that have this gold mine and they're chipping away, and they don't find it. And so they ultimately sell the mine, and the next person comes in and boom, 6 feet, there's the big vein, boom, there's the millions of dollars, right? They just gave up too early. They were that close. And so it's really just believing in what you want and just going at it and just never giving up.
Love that. I think that's so true. Something you said a minute ago really resonates. 9 out of 10 times we just keep going.
Yeah,
you're going to have success. And, if you're a baseball or football player, 90%, you're doing pretty good. You know what I mean? And in business,
exactly.
that's been my experience as well. And I mean, I'll be
Yeah,
a home run every time, but you get on base, you learn something. And I think most people are just afraid to fail. And that's where you
yeah,
just need to get over it. You realize you're going to fail. You're going to have failures, but
exactly. You just
you're
bounce back, you
failing
get back
forward.
up,
You're
you
just
dust
going.
yourself off. I heard a
Yeah.
statistic from Jesse Itzler when I heard him speak. He said, if you commit to doing something for just 1,000 hours, just 1,000 hours, look, golf, piano, whatever, you're better than 97% of the planet in that one thing that you're doing. And it doesn't take very long when you really break it down 1,000 hours, right? But if you do that, you're going to master that skill and you're better than 97% of the people out there.
I love that. I love that. Man, a lot of gold nuggets. You said one gold nugget, but we got a lot of gold nuggets today. I think you gave us a lot of value. And next time you're on a jet, we need to jump on it with you and spend some
There you
time.
go.
I think we'll pick up some more gold nuggets. And that way we'll subsidize it so your wife don't
I
get
think,
mad.
I just came up with a great idea, Chris. Why don't we create what becomes the first podcast that's actually filmed in air?
Oh, I love it.
The Mile
That'd be pretty
High
cool.
Show with Brad
love it.
Blazar, Chris, and John. And we
Love
interview
it, man.
people, boom, and we're in the sky. I got my camera crew there, and we're filming at 35,000 feet. The Mile High Show. Every episode is filmed on a private jet
Love
in
it.
the sky.
So
Dude, that'd be
like-
awesome.
Like
We'll be
driving with
there.
comedians, but it'll be flying with celebrities.
I love that idea.
That's
Yeah.
great. I love it. Well, I don't know if you've arrived yet, but you're definitely going places, Brad. I
Well,
appreciate it.
we'll give new definition to the Mile High Club.
I love it. I love it. That'll be a more appropriate one for our younger listeners.
You come on our show, you're a member of the Mile High Club, not the one you're thinking about.
I love it. I love it. Obviously, you're going to resonate with a lot of folks. We love real estate people. That's what we do as well. So, what can we do to help you? How can people get a hold of you? How can people reach out to you, get some more?
Oh
value?
man, you just Google my name. I'm all over social media. I'm the easiest guy to find. Just, Brad Blazar, Blazar. Don't put any E's in my last name. It's all A's. Reach out, get on a clarity call with me or one of my coaches. Call the office. They're usually there if I'm not traveling somewhere. Get me on Instagram, shoot me a DM, whatever. Buy my books. Love when people buy my books on Amazon. They're all there on Amazon as well. But really, it's just, learning how to collaborate with people. What are you doing? How can we collaborate? What can we do together? How can we kind of what I call cross-pollinate our communities? You got your followers. I got my huge list of followers. How can we add value to each other? And so, we always love to wrap up and then maybe, get on a call a week or two later and just say, okay, guys, great episode, great host. What can we do together? How can I help your listeners? How can I help you? Likewise, just like I did when I met this guy, I'm like, dude, let me connect you to my network. Boom. 2 days later, Matt Knowles, father to Beyonce, great guy.
That's awesome. Well, I greatly appreciate your time today, Brad. This has been really, really informational, a lot of gold nuggets, and honestly, just a great time. So
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a great hour.
yeah.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
All righty. Well, enjoy the rest of your conference, and we'll catch you later.
All right. Take care, guys.